if you brute force something, it's not good, right? It will take a lot of time to compute. So yeah, the main one of the main parts in theoretical computer science is achieving algorithms for problems. And yeah, so there is this notion of efficient algorithm. There is this polynomial time, there is this time complexity, how we measure the performance of an algorithm. You will get to know when you take the PDS course, but roughly you won't actually go that deep in PDS. But yeah, interested students can look into algorithms, time complexity, and stuff. You know, yeah. So this one of the main parts of theoretical computer science is algorithms. So you say, okay, let us look at this problem. I don't know. Maybe some of you already know. Uh, so
Drawing
if
a
you have some
straight line.
objects, yeah, suppose you have some objects and you want to sort them, and each of them has some value, and you want to sort them by in ascending order. How fast can you do it? Like, can you think of natural ways to sort things? I mean,
Using
physically, how do you do that?
comparison based sort, we can sort it in time and log n.
Right, I see. I mean, I know. Okay, you
Bubble
people
sort.
have. Okay, okay. What I'm asking is, suppose you have a deck of cards and it's randomly sorted. How do you naturally, uh, I mean, when you're trying to sort those cards, I don't think you do merge sort. I don't think you do quick sort. What do you do actually?
Take
Brute
them in
Just
force.
take a
ascending
card
order.
and arrange them. Means
Go
keep them
one by
standard
one.
and then arrange them.
Find the
Firstly, we will
first one and
see the lowest card and then the maximum card, and we'll have any middle card, and then find different cards between those three cards.
Just take a card and keep it as a standard, and then arrange as per predicted positions and all and all.
Right.
First,
Okay.
we'll take any two cards, and then comparing their values, we will swap them if one of them is larger. I mean, we'll arrange it based like accordingly. Then the next one and the one which will be larger will be we'll compare it with the next card and so on.
Yeah, yeah, I see, I see. I think you're trying to refer to bubble sort, but I don't, it's not efficient and we don't do it in real life.
it,
So I think
uh,
I'll tell you what we do in real life. Please stop answering.
All
I
the
think
ones connected.
so. I think we'll just check for the minimum card and then put it in the first place, and then you look for the next minimum card and put it at the second place, right? I think this you kind of do. You search for the next card and just put it at where it should be. You keep doing that, and at least I do it this way when I have a set of cards. I don't do all the stuff you're telling. Also, yeah, I think this is called selection shot or something. Yeah, you pick the maximum or minimum card and then put it at its place. Or naturally, what you do is, okay, fine. Like, yeah, you'll anyway learn about this basic algorithms, but yeah, algorithms is very important in theoretical computer science. So yeah, moving.
Yeah, so like I'll add on that. So what, like, okay, so just this term which I was trying to tell before someone muted me was, instead of computer science, just think it as a different way of framing the same thing. You think it of as science of computation. So you look how can you make your life easy in terms of computation. Okay, so many people told that it makes life of us easy, but in what aspect? Computation aspect. Like, you want to find something, like you find the shortest path from here to say Kolkata, from here to say Delhi. What is maths? Maths will just tell that, okay, the shortest path between the distance between Mumbai and Delhi is this. But what I want is not only the distance, but I want that path also. So what computer science does now is it comes and tries to compute that same path. Like, how can it find? So this is where there is a subtle difference between computer science and mathematics. There is huge intersection between these two areas, but this where a difference comes actually. Mathematics guys are like, okay, it exists. Like, previously we showed that triangle thing, right? So that exists, we know. But can
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
tell how to find that triangle? Yeah. Yeah. Can
yeah. So
someone tell a faster way to find that triangle? So it's something of this type. That's the subtle difference between mathematics and theoretical computer science.
Yes, the mathematician will say there exists a room in the cat, and then he'll just be happy. The computer scientist will come and say, okay, where is the cat? He'll try to find the cat in as less time as possible. So there is a thin line between mathematics and computer scientist there.
And someone whoever was telling coding and stuff, that actually comes in the path of computer engineering actually. So if you observe the department's name, it will be computer science and engineering, but no one even bothers to try to know why it's computer science and engineering. The engineering part is the coding and stuff which you do, and the science part is the mathematics involved in finding the algorithms. The algorithms are the one which you finally code. It's when you'll start coding in PDS lab. Yeah. So, okay. So this is a very nice topic. Okay. So what we did till now, we first looked at some puzzles. Then we
So
touched
how many of you
on
watched the
topics.
movie A Beautiful Mind? Did someone watch the movie Beautiful Mind?
Yes.
So it's story about Nash, John Nash.
John
Okay,
Nash.
so how many of you know John
John
Nash?
Nash. Equilibrium.
Yeah.
He is the founder of game theory.
Game theory.
No,
Yeah.
he's a big shot, but I don't think
Yeah.
he's a founder of game theory. Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was telling, what did we see till now? We saw that we started off with some puzzles. Then we touched upon some maths or maths topics, you can say, and then we look at some this topic not in deep, but using one nice example. So the way we are going through, this is sort of what we do in our regular activities in the club. We look at some puzzles, we discuss about some maths topics, and we discuss about some research topics also. So this is one research topic which is Nash equilibrium, which is quite famous, which many of you even know, like at least the word Nash equilibrium. So instead of going mathematically, let me give you a real life example. Okay, so you might have observed like all these for fast food chains like Burger King, McDonald's, Subway, KFC, all of them are usually side by side. Even if you see jewelry stores also, they are also side by side, like they're beside each other. Like have you like at least me as a child, I used to wonder like if they're side by side, it's lost for them only. They can be at separate places so that they'll get more money and all. But today we'll see like exactly why, like intuitively at least, why these guys at the end come together as at a common place in order to sell their stuff. So we'll take example of two shops, okay, and we'll consider this as a road actually, where there are a lot of people, like uniformly they are standing, like there are many people standing beside each other uniformly. Okay, so all these you can consider as people. And say you have these two shops, like consider that one as McDonald's and the green one as Subway. Okay, and like think from your perspective, like laziness and all, you will obviously want to go towards a shop which is nearer to you. So initially, okay, so if people are distributed in this fashion, so people might think, okay, this if the shops are placed here, then it will be fine. Okay, but that's not the case, because now think from this guy's perspective. Okay, so half of the guys will go for him and half of the guys will go for him. But if this guy just shifts here, then all these guys will go for him and then half of here will go for him. So you can say now 60-40, like 60% of the guys are going here and 40% of the guys are going here. I hope I am audible. Like,
Yeah,
can someone
yes.
come?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
You can
Yeah.
hear.
So yeah. So now you can see like 60%. Assume it's 60%. So all these guys will go here and half of remaining will go here. So now it's advantage for red guy. Now green guy sees this and now it will try to move even more closer. So now more guys will be going to green guy and less guys will be going to red guy. Then they repeat the same thing. And they continue doing this until they meet in the middle actually. Where now if the red guy tries to move somewhere other than the middle point, then it will get less people. Like it will get less people because like you can check it mathematically that its percentage of people going to it will decrease actually if it tries to move from here. And similarly, it's the case for green guy. So they come and meet in the middle and they now don't move actually. Like they don't find any profit moving from that particular place. So this is what we call, like vaguely, technical definition is something else, but this is what we call as Nash equilibrium. Like at this position, none of the shop will find any profit in moving from their respective places. So this is sort of a vague idea why all these fast food chains come and meet, especially in the city center. Like you'll always observe that the city center has a lot of good quality shops and all, and it's not at the outskirts of the city. So this is sort of a reason why. Like if you take a circle, then they converge in the middle. So it's sort of similar. So this is sort of the intuition behind why this thing happens, and this game theory stuff has a huge application obviously in economics because this is one economic stuff, but also in computer science. Now people might be wondering how in computer science in computer science it sort of comes in part of artificial intelligence and all. So if you take the courses in deep, you will come to know. So just as an overview of why this type of areas we touch actually. Yeah, Madhu?
Right. So as you see, computing Nash equilibrium is not easy. Like if you have some other problem and you want to find what is a Nash equilibrium, then it turns out to be very hard. You don't, okay, you might not exactly understand that, but okay, let us say you want to solve Sudoku. How do you solve Sudoku, right? You just kind of check, right? You just check where you can put number and stuff. Or
We'll start
yeah.
with a box, the first one, and then go on with boxes, and then check lines, then come and fill up everything that's left.
Yeah. There are many methods called slice, and yeah. There are many methods. You check in the box, you check in lines, and yeah, okay, fine, that's fine. You solve Sudoku like that. Okay, suppose you want to program a computer to solve a Sudoku. Like, so what do you naturally say it? Imagine a computer as a person, and he'll just follow whatever you say. What do you say him exactly, him or her?
If numbers appear here, it cannot be appear in any rows or any columns or in that box. It's like that eliminates the
Okay,
case.
assume that the
You'll
rules
just
are known to
tell
them.
it the rules basically. What do you say is
Tell it the rules and then
Firstly,
tell it to
firstly,
do something in an order.
firstly, we can tell the computer that the sum of every row or column or box should be equal to 45.
yes, you can tell all sorts of conditions, but do you think it'll come to the solution quickly, or are you saying basically the computer to check all possibilities, right? Can you do any better?
I would say that pick up one empty box and see the nine boxes around it, and then see its row and then see its column and figure out how many numbers can be entered there.
So what you're doing is brute force. Hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes. So what you just told is brute force. I'm getting an echo.
Okay. One thing you can do is you can start with an empty box, and the first number you find from one, you fill it. Then you fill the next box, and you keep checking. And then if something's not matching, you go back and change it. And then then again you continue. And if it's still not matching, you go back and change it again like that.
Right, fine. So whatever you guys are telling is brute force. right? You're basically kind of checking possibilities, right? So there are okay. For some problems, we can efficiently find the solution without checking all possibilities. And there are some problems, it seems to be that there is a division between problems. Like you see in the P box, 51 into 3, you don't check all possibilities, right? You don't check if 51 into 3 is equal to every number possible. You just kind of directly go into it. You just compute it. But
No,
if
that's
you
what I'm
look at a
saying. I'm not
Sudoku
saying check
problem,
all possibilities.
even if there is a
I'm saying you
unique
start with a
solution,
number.
seem to have a direct way of getting, kind of have to check all. Yes, I understand whatever you're trying to say are just maybe optimized versions of brute force. You are in a way kind of checking all possibilities. So
Can I state one of the methods that I used to do while solving Sudoku?
no. Okay, whatever you're saying is an optimized version maybe, but
No, I didn't
like,
actually say anything. I used to do like this. I used to check some of the columns and the rows, and I used to see if any numbers were missing and could be fit, and like that. I actually couldn't explain them.
Crisscrossing.
Okay.
That is called crisscrossing. Even I do that for solving Sudoku. That is
Oh.
better.
yes, I understand. But there are some Sudoku puzzles where you cannot fill any number. Like you cannot logically deduce that okay, this number has to be here. You have to kind of put a
But
number and go.
but that would be an imperfect Sudoku. A
No, no,
perfect
no, no,
Sudoku.
no. It has a unique solution, but still you have to check possibilities. There are Sudokus like that. I think you just didn't try one. Like, yeah.
I have solved one Sudoku which has two solutions, bhaiya.
Yeah, but
No.
what I'm saying is,
Two solutions ones are not perfect Sudokus.
yeah, right.
No,
What
no.
I'm saying is, okay, fine.
No, okay, Madhu, I'll take once. Okay, so what Madhu is saying is that there are some Sudokus where there is only unique solution, but the first step is not obvious. Like you guys are saying that okay, see the row or see the column and then or see the cell and fill the missing number. But even some Sudokus can be framed in such a way where first number which you are going to fill is also not that obvious actually. You have to try some possibilities and then rule out those possibilities and then fix okay only this number is possible.
Yes.
Okay.
This is called deterministic.
But
We say that.
there is a minimum of number of numbers that if you are given more than 17 numbers, you can solve any Sudoku without guessing any of the 81 boxes. If you
Yes, I know that fact. And there are Sudokus with exactly 17 entries. Those are the problem, right? That's what I'm saying. There are Sudokus with 17 entries and unique solution, and you cannot deterministically reduce. Like you have to kind of guess at some point and then reach to the solution, and maybe realize that your guess was wrong and change the number and that. So yeah, that
You
this
can make
this
the
is
computer make an hello.
what?
You can make the computer make and store all possible permutation and
Yeah.
combinations of a pseudo,
Okay.
then match
Okay.
it
So
with the right one.
yeah. Okay. Let me tell. Okay. So for this 9x9 box, it's fine. But what if the box is
N cross N, exactly.
1 million by 1 million? Yeah. 1 million by 1 million, then in that case, those many storages is not possible. Like I'm just like, if not 1 million, then go for 1 billion. But with just one configuration, you might store, but not in like those many configurations or those many storages or those like it will
Yeah,
take a lot of time.
just tell me how many possibilities are there, how many possible Sudokus are there for 100 cross 100 itself. It's a gigantic number, and we cannot compute that many possibilities. So yeah, so there are some problems for which we have to brute force, and for large instances you just cannot do them. Like if I give you 100 cross 100 Sudoku, if you program it as per the methods you're saying, it will just take years and years and it will just not find anything. So yeah, not all problems are easy. At least that's what we think. We did not find any algorithm. That doesn't mean that there is not any. Like we still don't know. So there is this natural uh, mm, classification between problems. Like that's what we observed, P and NP. So to explain what exactly is this, it will take at least 2-3 courses to understand what is P and NP. But yeah, move to next slide. Right. So does anybody know
Sir, wait.
about this? Yeah.
Sir, can you tell me what is this? Sir, what is going on? Which meeting is this? I had joined your
Who are
class.
you? Yeah, who are you first
Sir,
of all?
Sir, I am from this new batch, 2020.
Right. Everyone is from new batch only, I guess.
Yeah, we are 4th year, so like, yeah. So do you have like this maths reading group which is going on?
Yeah, I think we can continue.
Yeah.
It's a maths class.
Yeah.
No, not a class. I mean,
No,
you should
It
ask
says
your questions in the
Sir,
chat, I
it's a
guess.
part of TA work or what else? So what is?
Okay.
Sir, can you tell me?
Okay, fine.
Okay, so
I'll
can
explain.
you keep your questions for the end? Like we'll address the same questions at the end, or you come in the chat, I'll tell you there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'll just share the screen again. Yeah.
Right.
Just
Fine. Yeah. If you have any such very interesting questions, then just put it in your chat. We'll try to answer.
Yeah.
And if you start asking why we are here, then it's a very big question. I cannot really tell you. If you ask existential questions like that, I cannot answer. Fine. Millennium problem. So anyone knows? I mean, does anyone know what these are? Millennium problems.
A list of
These were the
unsolved
7
problems
problems
that
given
haven't been
by
solved.
the Clay Institute of Mathematics, which
Yes.
are not yet solved except the Poincare conjecture, upon solving which the mathematician or the problem solver will get $1 million as a
Yes.
prize.
So these are a set of very important. Like if anyone solves or one of these problems, it will be a very big, it will be a very big change. It will have very big consequences. So what consequences you might not understand yet. So suppose if you solve P equal to NP, then it will be a paradise. Everything will be a paradise. We'll replace all humans with machines, and it will just be a utopia. I mean, you don't understand. You might not understand yet why, but if someone proves that P is NP, then
okay. So
boom.
I'll tell in very
Everything
simple
will be
terms.
simple. All Sudokus will be solved in milliseconds.
Yeah. So the methods which you guys were telling, if you try to make it done by a computer, then it might take years. But if someone shows that they solves this P is equal to NP problem, then within milliseconds you will be solving those Sudoku questions like very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like your phone won't lag, nothing will lag. It'll just be like boom, everything is fast. Well, not exactly. Well, there are problems which even after P equal to NP are hard, but okay, you can study it later. Yeah. So Riemann hypothesis, if it is proved, then all cryptographies will break, all security will break, and rest all even I don't know what exactly there. And yeah, out of all this, Poincare conjecture is solved by Perelman, and this guy is a very crazy guy. So he rejected the 1 million. He just run away from this achievement. He became antisocial and he's a crazy guy. He rejected the Fields Medal. He rejected the 1 million. He just threw it away. Like he didn't give any shit. No, crazy guy. Okay, and he's the only one who solved any problem at all. Right. So to actually give you a taste of how hard and simple a problem can be. So there is this collage conjecture. So it is very simple. Take a number, If it is even, divided by 2. If it is odd, multiplied by 3 and add 1. Okay, so for example, I mean, you keep doing this operation. Like if you have 7, 7 is odd, so 7 into 3 plus 1, 22. 22 is even, so by 2, 11. Into 3 plus 1, 34. And then it becomes 17, 52, 26, 13. And then it will eventually reach 1. Okay. And if it reaches 1, I'll just stop. Okay, I'll say, okay, this number passed the test. 7 passed the test. If you take 6, 6 goes to 3, 3 goes to 10, 10 goes to 5, 5 to 16, 8, 4 to 1. So we kind of observed this. Okay, now you ask the question, is this true for any number? Like if you take any number and do this, does it eventually reach 1? And we don't know. We checked it for trillions and trillions of numbers, like huge numbers, and for all of them it's true, but there is no proof why it is happening. So what is a conjecture? A conjecture is something that is true, observed to be true, but no one either disproved it by counterexample, or is there any explanation why it's happening. Maybe you can try, maybe someone else can solve. It looks very simple, right? Just take a number into 3 plus 1 if it's odd, by 2 if it's even, it should come down to 1. Yeah, maybe you can try it. If you solve, then you will be celebrating. You will have all the money you want. You'll just, yeah, it'll be a breakthrough. So another example like this is a Goldbach conjecture. It's very simple. You take any even number greater than 2, and it should be sum of 2 prime numbers. Suppose you take 4, 2 plus 2, 6, 3 plus 3, 8, 3 plus 5, 10, 5 plus 5, or 3 plus 7. They can be multiple possibilities, but fine. So this also is observed to be true until trillions of large numbers, but there is no proof yet, or disproof. There is no counterexample, or no one proved why it's happening. But mathematicians have made a lot of progress into proving it is sum of at least like they increase 2 to 4 or 5. Like they have proved it for weaker case, and when the even number is at least some, okay, fine, we can talk about it in depth later. But yeah, maybe you can try. I don't think you have the sufficient tools enough to attack this problem, but yeah, someday maybe some of you will solve. Yeah, next. Right, so the important question, maybe many of you might have asked yourself or someone else, like, okay, what is all this? I mean, what is this math stuff, primes and stuff? Why are we doing this? Can't we just, okay, we'll study here and then this get a so-called 1 crore package and we'll leave? No, this is a myth. That it's a very popular myth that IITians just get 1 crore package and then they'll get settled and they'll have all the money they want. It's not true. It's not true. And it's creating a lot of pressure among students and parents and expectations. But please don't believe this. You might get a very good package and stuff, but essentially if you are here, then you are very smart. You are the smartest in the nation in your batch. So naturally you want to contribute something to science. Many of you are very smart and might be interested in science, but you just don't have the right orientation, someone right to guide you. Many of us people in my batch who got placed in Google or Microsoft, they just reject the job and move to masters. I mean, they try to do masters, or they try to do PhD, essentially because they're interested and they want to actually make some impact. Like, so if you sit in a company and code, if you're coding for a company who sells detergent to people, what exactly are you doing? What are you contributing? So So yeah, that's the point. It's not like people can't get placed or can't get placed anyway. Just study well and have good CG, and So the point is, yeah. Next slide. Yeah, why? Do you know that? Okay, I'll ask you a simple question. So I'll give you a number and ask you if it's prime. What exactly will you do?
Okay, the question is whether you can test whether it's a prime or not.
Yes. How do you guys do? Basic high school methods.
Just check
You
if
just
the
take
card
some
is divided.
if,
root of that, and then after taking the root, you can check the answer that you get approximately that number, and number lower than that if that is divisible or not.
Right, okay. Someone is saying I'll check until root n, right? It's a basic high school method, right?
Yeah.
Someone do better than that, faster than that.
What is the question exactly?
So I'll give you a number. You have to test it if it is a prime as fast as possible.
Can we use that particular thing that was told, like 6 and every prime number is actually in the form of 6n plus 1? Can we do it like that?
Yeah, that doesn't help you much. You can, yeah, I mean, it doesn't help you
Yeah,
much.
even after finding it's a 6n plus 1, we have to show that it's a prime.
Yeah, I will give you a prime of form 6n plus 1. What will you do? You did not gain anything, right? So anything else other than the root and algorithm? I think you know another algorithm for finding primes.
Eratosthenes.
Eratosthenes. Exactly. So that is a little bit, yeah, it might be faster, but no, it's not really efficient. So yeah, suppose I give you a 1000-digit number. It's like 1000-digit number is 10 power 1000, right? It's gigantic, and if you apply any of these methods, it's bound to fail, right? Even Eratosthenes sieve or root n method, it's bound to fail if it's 1000-digit number.
What about something like Miller-Rabin? I mean, I know that will fail anyway. I mean,
Yeah, so
for
it's
that
it's
large.
okay. It's nice you know that, but people might not know. But it's wrong also. But wrong with less
Voice
probability. So yeah, someone has
your voice is getting broken a bit.
Mine or?
Yours.
Okay. Is it fine now?
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right. So other than the basic naive methods, there are other methods that are faster, but until sometime there was no deterministic, meaning there are algorithms that will be correct almost always, but they might fail sometimes. And yeah, stuff like that. But until these guys from IIT Kanpur, they came up with the first fastest. Okay, by fastest I mean you won't understand what is fast yet, but yeah, in terms of there is something called time complexity and polynomial time complexity.
Like in simple terms, like something which would have taken an year, visual methods would now take just a second. You can just relate it in that way.
Yes. So previously, if it is 1000-digit number, it will take something like 2 power 1000 steps or something like that, exponential 2 power something power 1000. It's like that. But now it's like 1000 square or 1000 power 12. It just depends on the number of digits. So even if it's 1000 digits, you just do it very fastly. So this was done by undergraduates from IIT Kanpur. It's called the AKS primality testing algorithm. Okay, so they got many awards. They got you know Ford
They got
Fulkerson
Godel, right?
Award.
No,
not
Fulkerson. Yeah, Fulkerson.
maybe
Yeah.
Godel also, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, this
So
Fulkerson Award is a very top award. Like it's only given to top research scientists, and these guys are undergrads, not even top, still not
yeah.
scientists.
Yeah, so it
Like
broke the ground. Basically, when they published this paper, everyone was shocked. Like people worked on it for years, lots of years. And yeah, this is a recent result, but so basically this is a motivation for people like us. It's possible under the right guidance. So Manindra Agarwal is the professor here, and those two are students, Nitin Saxen and Neeraj Kyal. And we personally met Neeraj Kyal at IISc. But yeah, so the point is it's possible, but the only thing is people are misguided into or not guided into not guided properly into going into theory or yeah. So they are focusing on other stuff because people around them are doing that. So it's so at least we form this group because so that you can focus and have some help, know what to do if you're interested in stuff like
at least you are getting a chance to explore. Like you can explore. If you don't like, it's fine. If you like, then it's a good platform to build upon.
Yes. The whole point is to have an opportunity to explore and someone to guide you. And previously it was not there. Only last year, and you guys have this opportunity properly. You can take help from us. Like we got properly exposed into theory. Luckily by professors in IIT Kharagpur or IISc. Right. So that is a point. We can undergrad research is possible and is very much encouraged, and you have all the support. You have people like us, and many professors are there who know very much. I mean, who know better than us. Yeah. So that's a conclusion, and we encourage you to go explore this area as well. I mean, I know that you'll explore coding. You'll go. Yeah, but this is very important.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah, Arnab is saying.
Like the main reason why we do research is actually it's fun to solve hard problems. Like you get a different level of satisfaction when you solve something which was not solved by anyone else before actually. And under the proper guidance, it's possible. Yeah. But
Yes. So how many of you kind of solve Olympiad problems for fun? Maybe how many of you wrote RMO? How many of you wrote INMO? Maybe how many of you went to camp or something? Anyone
I
had?
wrote INMO but got a 0.
Okay.
I went to
fine.
camp.
Okay, good. Okay, so I mean, you guys should have enjoyed, right? Solving those problems. They're hard, but I mean, they're solvable, right? We just have to think for some time, and they're fun, right? Except the difference here is these are unsolved problems. There you're solving easy problems, but they're solved. Like, yeah, people know how to do those. But except now you're trying to crack unsolved problems. And the happiness you get, it's something very different when you solve an open problem or when you crack an open problem. And it has some real impact when you solve an unsolved problem. Otherwise, in all other stuff, you're not really making any real impact, right? Yeah, Arnab.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you guys have any questions.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions, you can ask. I'll just 1 second.
Hello.
I'll stop sharing. Yeah. I stopped.